All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. This is Code and Coffee, the show where Christopher goes in, does some live coding, and plays around with various web technologies. Now, I'm going to say hi to chat in just a second here, but just as a little bit of background for anybody who's tuning in for the first time, I'm a senior program manager inside of Microsoft Cloud and AI. I'm a longtime web dev, and basically what this show is all about is, well, it's really all about live coding, that it really is sort of like, this is what the real experience is all about. And it's really about getting in and exploring. That I will openly admit, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form on many of the things that we're going to be doing, and certainly not in Vue, which is going to be the primary thing that we're going to be doing today. And so what that means is that as we go through this, I will absolutely be pulling up documents. I will absolutely be making mistakes, and that's really like part of the whole thing, and it's part of the journey, because after all, that's how we all learn. We all learn by going in and making mistakes. And so I know a little bit about what it is that we'll be doing today. I've got a couple of goals in mind that I want to point towards, but you are going to notice that this is not going to be prepackaged, slick demos, but instead it really is going to be an exploration. And so as we go through this, please feel free to ask questions or otherwise inside of chat. That I get lonely here if it's just me typing away on a computer. I mean, I could be doing that all on my own, and firing up records and all of that good stuff. But I'm here for you. I'm here to chat. So by all means, say hi, ask questions, and so forth. That this is really what it's all about. So good morning to Real Deal. Good morning to Todd. It's great to see people coming back. Amir, your test was successful. Hello to Fred from Whitby, Ontario. I don't know where that is. I've actually spent a fair amount of time in Canada, but yeah. Hello to Carlos. Good to see you back. Good to see you back, David. WZ, good morning. Good morning to Aladar. Alana, good morning. Good morning to Michael. And to answer the question, what's my favorite color? I don't know that I really have one. Yeah, I don't know. So good morning to Pete. Good to see you back here. So yeah, first question. No, I appreciate that. Cool. All right. Well, let's do this. Let me get over to here, and let's go ahead and sort of highlight a little bit. I'm going to keep saying hi to people. So I see Wafa, Malcolm, good morning. Shilpa, good morning. Lily asked the question, what language are we using today? English, he said with a smirk. No, we're going to be using TypeScript. And I do want to highlight this fact real quick, that if you're not familiar with TypeScript, if you're not familiar with Vue, that's okay. That, part of this really is just sort of exploring and seeing things here. So if you're not necessarily overly familiar with all of the text that we're using, that's all right. That hopefully by just sort of watching, that you can pick up little tips and tricks as we go along, and that when it comes time for you to sit down and then learn Vue or learn TypeScript, hopefully some of the things that we'll have gone through, you'll then remember and will then help you out. So yeah, I see a little love for TypeScript. I'm a huge fan of TypeScript. Good morning to Michael. Good morning to Marin. Oyston from Santa Cruz. Good to see you. And Toronto. I just noticed that Toronto's actually one of my favorite cities. I love Toronto. It's sort of like a smaller, cleaner version of New York City. I love Toronto. So yeah, good to see you with love to learn Vue from David there. VBA successor on the menu today. Not sure about that, but that's all right. But only know JavaScript. So the question is, if I know nothing about Vue.js and TypeScript, but only know JavaScript and React, can you still follow along? Sure, absolutely. That again, we've already kind of started this project, and I'm going to share out the source code here in just a moment. And so you can absolutely just go ahead and watch and see what's going on. Good morning to Julio, to Amran from Israel. I actually had the pleasure of going out and visiting Tel Aviv earlier this year. I don't know, 2020 is sort of weird. And Barcelona, one of my favorite places in the world. Hello to Julian. So I've been there a couple of times now. Love it. So cool. All righty. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's start here. What is snowpack? Let's answer that right away. So what is snowpack? Snowpack is a web bundler, and it's sort of like Webpack and Grunt and all of those different tools that are out there. And what I like about Snowpack, and Snowpack is very similar to Parcel as well, is it generally just does what needs to be done and doesn't necessarily require a lot of configuration. That one of the things that I really don't like about Webpack is I don't like having to write a bunch of code just to make my code work. That I've spent all of this time writing all of my code. I don't want to have to write more code and have to debug code that's now going to allow it to run. That just it seems like we're just now moving the goalpost here. And so that's why I'm personally not a fan of like Webpack or Grunt or a lot of the bundling tools that require you to go in and write scripts. And sure, I know that you can go out and get, various boilerplate bits that will do things for you. But again, it's not something that I'm a huge fan of. And so it's why I really like Snowpack. That with Snowpack, if I bring up my my code here, there's actually very little configuration that needs to be done here. That I'm just telling it, hey, this is where my my app code is. This is a route to an API that we're using, and then plugins for the different things that we're using. So with Vue, TypeScript, .env, and that's really it. And that's what I really like about something like Snowpack. And Parcel is very similar. It's that same thing that it will just automatically go in and do it for you. So it gives you that ability to have all of that run without having to write a bunch of code to make that happen. So that's sort of my turn off when it comes to like Webpack, and it's why I like a tool like Snowpack or again Parcel does very much the same thing. So Ilan says completely no to coding. That's fantastic. Welcome. Cool. Let's see. Michael says, worried about that, only done the basics. That's totally fine. If you've only done the basics, just watch and absorb, is what I can recommend there. So, cool. Good to see that you'll be starting with JavaScript in today's class. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Cool. Okay. Where was I? By the way, in case you haven't noticed, ask questions. Again, this is what I'm here for. All right. GitHub. Here we go. Cool. Let me go ahead and paste that in. So right there. is what I just pasted into chat is the repository for all the code that we're working on. So by all means, feel free to go ahead and clone that, fork that, and so forth. That's what we're going to be building on. But I really want to keep answering chat's questions here. So I know we haven't gotten into coding yet. Don't worry, we'll get there. But there's a couple of really good questions in here that I want to answer. So let me ask the question from Harlem, 16 years old, learned a lot about web dev and wondering how to use skills to get an internship in the tech industry without having a strong network. So I'm going to answer this in a couple of different ways. So first of all, I want to go to the network part. One of the big things that you are going to notice, and I think that this is true in almost any industry, but it's certainly true in my experience in DevLand, is networking is a big part of moving up the ladder, so to speak, to getting that next job and so forth and so on. That the way that I got into Microsoft was through years and years of networking, that I established a lot of relationships, and then eventually what wound up happening is I got one opportunity after another, and then eventually it paid off, and somebody said, "Hey, we should just hire that Christopher guy," and they did, and here I am. But even then, it doesn't stop. That inside of Microsoft, it's kind of funny because Microsoft is 120,000 people, which is the size of like a small city, and even with that size, it's still relatively small. That you're gonna always still keep working with like the same people, or you'll still wind up bumping into them as you go around. And so my current manager, I actually met him relatively early on inside of at my time at Microsoft. That he was actually in another role. He was actually not in a managerial role at that point. And so we had connected a couple of times, and so he knew who I was and what it was that I did. And so when he got a team, he was like, "Oh, I remember that Christopher person. I want him." And so he reached out to me specifically and said, "Hey, do you want to come work on my team?" And I said yes. And so here I am. So like that networking is a big thing, and it's something that you'll always need to make sure that you're paying attention to, that you're tending to, is make sure that you're always networking. It's such a huge component to getting out there. Now, if you don't necessarily have a network, how can you use your skills then to get an internship? So I'm going to admit here that I have a non-standard background, that I flunked out of college, that for kind of a very long story, I wound up flunking out of college. And so I wound up getting my first job. This was way back in like the late 90s. So like like .com boom era, and I managed to land a job doing tech support, and so that was basically what got my foot in the door, and then I kind of went from there. So I'll be open and honest in saying that I don't have any personal experience in trying to track down an internship because that was not the path that I went. That being said, at least in my experience, and maybe other people in chat will have different experiences as far as getting an internship goes, and might want to share that. But at least in my experience, from what I've seen, one of the best ways that you can do that is by working through a college recruiter. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, say a boot camp. But just a traditional college, that they're always going to have some level of recruiting. So, for example, Bema, since I know you're in New York City, I actually work an awful lot with somebody over at NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, which is just down in Newark, and they have they have groups of people that their job is to then reach out to recruiters from large companies and try and get their students internships and try and get their students jobs and so forth. And so that can actually be, I think, one of the better ways to get in and do that is to connect with those recruiters and go from there. Pounding the pavement and doing like job fairs and things like that can also be really helpful. So you can go in and check that out. So that would be I think sort of my core recommendations to you. And then the next big one is, and Peter sort of hints at this, and Lily sort of hints at this as well, about asking about whether or not you could put this on a portfolio. But there's a dear friend of mine who likes to just give this very basic career advice, and it's worked very well for him, and I found that it's worked really well for me. Is just show up every day and kick butt. It's show up every single day and do the absolute best that you can, because you never know the days when somebody's going to be watching. And if you're showing up and you're just constantly just crushing it, eventually the right person is going to see it and you're going to get that opportunity. So just keep showing up, keep doing that thing. That, if I'm going to quote one of my idols, who's a marathoner, Des Linden, she has this very basic mantra of keep showing up, and I think that exact same thing is true. Is just keep showing up, keep doing it, and eventually those opportunities will show up. Real Deal also mentions, find your passion. 100%. That one of the biggest reasons that I've been, whatever level of success it is that you want to say that I've had here, one of the biggest reasons that I am where I am is because I love what I do. That don't get me wrong, I work for a living. That this old mantra of find what you love to do and do that for your job and you'll never work a day in your life. That's sort of trite nonsense. That there's still work, like you're still going to work, but I still love what it is that I do. And even in days when I'm struggling, I'm still very happy to be where I am. So 100% find that passion. Do what you do to avoid burnout. That's 100% true, and it's something that, and again, I can only speak to the tech field. It's the field that I'm in. It's something that I see quite frequently. Is people don't do that, and this is certainly true inside of inside of Microsoft. That it's one of the things that you'll notice, and I'm sure that Microsoft isn't alone in this, is that there's a lot of people that are taking like the last 2, 3, 4 weeks of the year off inside of Microsoft. And part of the reason is because of holidays, but the other part of the reason is because we don't take enough days off throughout the rest of the year. And so we just work, and then we have got all this vacation that we have to burn before the end of the year. And so you see that quite frequently inside of Microsoft. I'm not giving any trade secrets away by saying this, because I know that we're not alone in this, that this is a very common issue in the tech industry. So absolutely, mental health is extremely important. Taking time off is extremely important. And also knowing when to say, I've had enough, and knowing when to ask for help. is also really important. That I'm blessed. I'm really lucky. I work on a fantastic team where not only my fellow teammates, but also my manager is very in tune to mental health. And so I can go to my manager and I can say, hey, you know what? I need a break. And he'll respect that, and he'll work to make sure that I can that I can get that break. So mental health, self-care is so important, and make sure that you're taking time to do that. The other big thing is make sure that you have a hobby that is away from this computer. And I'm saying that as somebody who games, that I love playing Flight Simulator. I have wasted more hours of my life than I honestly care to admit playing Sid Meier's Civilization. So I spend a lot of time in front of the computer, but I really work hard to spend a lot of time away from the computer, that I run, which, physical activity, by the way, is another very big thing. But I really try hard to get away from the computer as well, and do that. So all of that is extremely important. Mental health, getting time away, and avoiding burnout. All of those are extremely important. Yeah, hiking. Yeah, whatever it is, do all of that. Cool. Wow, I just realized my code is out of date. Just gonna do this real quick. There we go. That's weird. Huh. All right. Oh, that's right, because last week was Thanksgiving. That's why it's 14 days old on GitHub. That's right. Yeah. Let's see. Good morning. What do I think about coding boot camps like Springboard? Does Microsoft student hire students coming from there? Krishna asked the question. So I'm not going to. I'm not going to offer opinions on any specific bootcamp. A, because I don't want to call any of them out, and B, because I literally don't have any experience with any of them. So I'm not going to say about any specific bootcamp. But what I will say is a bootcamp can be a great way to get into the industry. And in fact, one of the people on my sibling team, Chloe Condon, is proudly from a boot camp. That was how she got in to the industry. And I know that there's a few other cloud advocates that went that route as well. And to a certain extent, I kind of did that. I went to a very much a for-profit type of college that in reality I probably shouldn't have. That this was very much more of a predatorial school. That this was, again, like mid to late 90s, and I and I wound up going something like $15,000 into debt for a 2-year school. And I know that that's not necessarily a ton by today's standards, but even like in today's dollars, that would be quite a bit more. I mean, for a 2-year program, that's a lot of money to have gone into debt. And so I got very lucky to have found a couple of good jobs right after that. And I was able to pay all of those loans off. It took a while, but I was able to get out from under that. So in the end, it actually worked out pretty well. So yeah. Lily asked the question, what position would I recommend for people to apply to who just recently went from a boot camp? Yeah, a couple of things. So number one is Carlos calls out the Microsoft Leap program, which I'm a huge fan of the Leap program. I've some of the best people at Microsoft that I've worked with are Leapers. That the Microsoft Leap program is about taking somebody who is from a non-standard background, from a non-standard tech background, and are trying to make the move into tech. So the LEAP program is all about that. And so there's actually like a little bit of a boot camp where they'll like teach you C# or whatever languages it is, and then they put you into an internship that will then get you an interview then for a for a job from there. And it's a fantastic program and definitely one worth checking out. As far as like what position, honestly, anything, of course, that's going to be entry level is a must. The one bit of advice, though, that I will always give to people that are getting into the industry for the first time is if you are going to eventually want to become a developer, try and get a developer title as soon as possible. That one of the things that I've run into personally, and I've seen other people struggle with this as well, is they'll get into the industry, they'll have maybe like a program manager title or, like test engineer title or something like that. And then they eventually decide, hey, I want to go become a developer. And because of the fact that their resume doesn't have the word developer on there, that they find it harder to then get that role. That the role that I had previous to this inside of Microsoft, that almost cost me the job, that I hadn't had the word developer on my resume for quite a long time. And it wasn't because I hadn't been writing code. It was just I hadn't been writing code as my full-time job. And so it became really hard for me to then get that role. So I had to fight for it to get it. So that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give is make sure that if you eventually want to become a developer, that you get that developer title as early as possible, because that's going to give you a lot more flexibility. That making the move from being a developer to, say, being a product manager or to being a program manager, that's going to be a much easier transition to try and make than the other way around. And if you, I don't know why my camera's not focusing quite right. There we go. So if you then later on decide, hey, maybe you're a developer for a couple of years and then you're a program manager for a couple of years, and then you later decide that you want to go back and do development again, that transition is going to be okay because you'll have had that developer job title in the past. So get that onto your resume as early as possible, and it's going to give you a lot more flexibility later on. Let's see. So many fantastic questions. I'm loving this conversation. I hope you're enjoying it. I know I am. So yeah. If you want to get a job as a front-end engineer, Lele asks, should it focus on building projects rather than data structure algorithm? Because I think data structure algorithm is more for software engineer. Boy, this is a fantastic question. So I'm going to give you Christopher Harrison's opinion here. And keep in mind that, again, I don't have that normal background, that I did not go to school to become a developer, that I did go to tech school, but even back then, that the tech school that I went to, I went into it looking to become a network engineer, and I sort of later on in career found that I preferred doing software development, and so this is where I found myself, and it's worked out really well. And so what that means is that like those algorithms that you're supposed to learn, I've never learned them. That the next time in my life that I write a bubble sort will be the first time. I've never had to do it. And it also, in turn, and again, Christopher Harrison opinion, it's why I struggle so much with the way that the software engineer interview is so commonly done, that if I'm looking to hire an engineer, I don't care whether or not they can write a bubble sort, because again, it's not something that you're commonly going to do. That if I need to sort an array, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say array.sort. And I'm done. That what I might need to do is I might need to, create a real quick little just like, comparison algorithm for that. But I'm not having to write bubble sort or anything like that for it. So why should I, if I'm interviewing somebody, ask them to write a bubble sort? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so whenever I'm interviewing, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for technical aptitude. How well do you know whatever languages or frameworks it is that you say you know? And I'm also looking for your thought process. I want to know that if I gave you a challenge, are you going to ask the right questions? That, there's... there's that old O'Reilly joke book, searching Stack Overflow or whatever it's called, and sort of that common joke that this is where all developers go. And there's certainly a lot of truth to that a lot of times we're going to get stuck and we're going to need to go off to someplace like Stack Overflow and go look for something. But here's the catch. Is you're only going to get so far if all that you're ever doing is you're just going to Stack Overflow and you're just copying and pasting code. You're only going to get so far doing that. That there is a skill to knowing what questions to ask. And there's also a skill to knowing what it is that you're actually reading there, to grokking what it is that you're reading there, so that way you can bring that back with you into whatever it is that you're writing. That, for want of a really weird analogy here, it's sort of the same thing when you have people who are not in the medical profession trying to go off and read medical studies. That there's a lot of information and verbiage in there that somebody who doesn't have that background is not going to understand. And it's sort of the same thing here, that if somebody goes off to Stack Overflow and they find an answer, are they simply copying and pasting, or are they understanding what question it is that they asked, and then in turn, do they grok what the answer is, and then how to best apply that? And so if I'm interviewing something, that's really what I'm looking for is, are they asking the right questions? Do they have the right thought process? Do they understand what it is that they're talking about? That's really what it is that I'm looking for. So at least for me, learning about algorithms and things like that, it's nice to like exercise those muscles, but sitting down and like memorizing those things, I don't think is a great exercise necessarily. And again, this is Christopher Harrison's opinion. Let's all always keep that in mind here. And so what I think, where I think you'll be much better served then is on that first part is build projects. Do things that, and I've highlighted this in the past, the way that I got into web dev is back in the old days with ASP and VBScript. And what I did is I wrote a website for my fantasy football league. And it's sort of a silly thing to say. I understand that. And you're probably hearing that and going, gosh, that's really silly. Why did you do that? Well, the reason that I did it was because I had a passion around what it was that I was building. That fantasy football is something that interests me. But more importantly, is it gave me a challenge. That in having to write that, there was a lot that I had to learn, about how to work with a database. I had to learn algorithms, that I had to figure out how to process a workflow, for example, that if you have two players that are going to make a trade, there might be like some back and forth. So somebody puts forth an offer, and then another owner can say yes or no. And so maybe they say no and they counter. And so like keeping track of where all of that sits inside the workflow, that took a bit of work. And so I had to learn how to do all of that. So I really had to learn how to think about the problem. I had to learn about the technology and how to best apply it. And it worked out really well for me. And I honestly do attribute a lot of where I am today to that very fact that it really forced me out of my comfort zone very early on in my developer career, and thus in turn gave me a lot of experience in web dev, which continues to pay dividends even today. So yeah. Earned MCSE in networking from a private college since 2006. Learned programming. It's only in 2017. Really got hands-on with Android Studio. Fred mentions, yeah, you've got to get in. You've got to do it. You've got to write code there. Use Visual Studio to program web dev and apps. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you have to get in and you have to do it. 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 Okay, cool. That was a lot of fun. A lot of great questions there. Okay. Cool. Let's see. By all means, in case you haven't noticed, ask questions. This is what I'm here for. All right. Let's see. Where was I? Yeah. Yeah. Aladar mentions, 100 days, the hashtag 100 devs, to start coding your passion project and use that to learn real world experience. 100%. Yeah, do that. Do exactly that. Yeah. David says best way to learn code is to write code. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. For a front-end project, Clonify following along and put them up in your portfolio. So Lily asked the question. There was another question earlier, and I had meant to get to it as well. Let me just answer this real quick about putting forth a portfolio. So again, my experience, Christopher Harrison opinion here. So when it comes to putting together a portfolio, you want a portfolio that's going to show that you yourself have built something, not necessarily that you yourself have followed along with a tutorial, but rather that you applied what it is that you learned. So if you are going to clone what it is that I've built and recreate this and put this in as your own thing inside of a portfolio, I don't think that's necessarily going to carry a lot of weight. However, if you clone a repository and you learn from it, and then you go, oh, okay, now what I want to do is I want to build something on my own, and I'm maybe going to use this as a little bit of a foundation. That's something then to show off. So that's really it, is working through a series of exercises and coming out the other end with a website and going, hey, I now want to put that on my portfolio. That's not necessarily going to carry a whole lot of weight, but putting together something that you've built, that's going to carry more weight. So that's really what you want to do. Studying computer science, third year in college, still don't know what you want to do in the future. I'm in my mid to late 40s. I'm still not sure what I want to do in the future. I think Pete really hits probably the best piece of advice there is internships. So one of the things that that we'll do, of course, here at Microsoft is, we bring on interns, and this. Not the summer that just ended, but the summer before, we had a fantastic intern that everybody just loved. And so he, of course, was offered the opportunity to come back and do that same internship role the next year. But he had also received another offer from elsewhere inside of Microsoft. And the response to him from our team was universal. Go take that other role, because those college years, those internships especially, are just such a great opportunity to go see what you like. That if you're anything like me, and I know I am, I don't know something, I don't grok something until I'm actually doing it. So I need to get in and I need to do it. And so getting an internship is a great way to do that. So you mentioned that you did have an internship. Still don't know. Maybe go try another one. That if you're third year, then you've obviously got one more summer coming up. And depending on whether or not you're going to be graduating in 4 years or 5 years, you might have yet another opportunity. So what I would say is get an internship doing something different, and more importantly, at a different company. So it might have been like if you didn't, you're still like, well, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of factors there that it could be. It could be that you are. It could very well be that it is something that is going to be your passion, but there was just a couple of things that got in your way that, so much of it can be situational. So absolutely, go try something different that you might find something new there. Darren asked a question, do interns get paid? And the answer to that sort of is it depends. And there's a lot of things that are going on that are going on around that. At least at Microsoft, our interns do get paid, but as far as like what they're going to get paid and so forth, that's going to vary. So, but yeah. What do I think about taking courses from Udemy and putting the licenses certifications on LinkedIn? So I don't have any recommendations on courses. I'm gonna step past that. But as far as putting those types of things onto LinkedIn, sure. I mean, I think that can be helpful. If you're just like highlighting those types of things on like LinkedIn, I think that can be a good thing. Can you have my job? No, I kind of like my job. I have a lot of fun doing this. Okay. All righty. Okay. Yeah, if I would absolutely say this is, when it comes to like pay of interns and so forth, that absolutely get paid 100% as an intern. That I would be remiss if I ever said to take a job where you're not getting paid. I would never offer that to, or never offer that as advice to anybody. Now, keep in mind that even if you are getting paid as an intern, you're probably not going to be making a fair bit as an intern. But the real critical part to an intern, and these are the questions that I would be asking if I'm coming in as an intern, is what am I going to be doing? Because internships are going to vary wildly as to what it is that you're going to be doing. And so if the only thing that you're going to be doing is fetching coffee orders, then that's not a place that you want to be, even if you're getting paid, because you're not going to get experience. You'll maybe get some networking absolutely very important, but you're not going to be getting experience. And it's one of the things, and again, I swear I'm not just trying to brag on Microsoft here, but it's true. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about internships at Microsoft is we treat you like an employee. That at my prior role, one of the things that our org did is we worked an awful lot side by side with customers, so that customers would come to us and they would go, "Hey, we're trying to implement some new cutting edge feature." So like chatbots, for example. And so what we would do is we would work side by side with that customer because we wanted to understand what their problems were. And we wanted to understand where our products could be improved. And the best way to do that is to actually work side by side with a customer. So we're literally, walking that proverbial mile. And we would take our interns with us because our interns, as far as we were concerned, were employees. So we would be sitting in a room with a couple of developers from one of our customers. I would be there and I would have an intern or two with me, and all of us would be writing code. We would be treating each other like peers. And so the interns there are getting real experience. And that's, I think, the biggest part to being an intern is make sure that you're going to get that real experience there. So, yeah. Would freelancing be beneficial to trying to get a job in the future? Absolutely. So I freelanced for quite a while before I settled into a full-time job. And there's a lot that you need to understand about getting into freelancing before you make that leap. That Pete does highlight a point there about, it can be a great way to network. It absolutely is. And it's how I actually got to where I am, is because by being a freelancer, it gave me a bit of freedom to take opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had. That if I was working full time for a job and somebody from Microsoft said, "Hey, can you come do this thing for us for 2 weeks?" If I'm working full time, it's not something I'm going to be able to say yes to. But as a freelancer, it gave me that freedom and flexibility to be able to say yes. But at the same time, you need to understand that as a freelancer, there's a lot of time and effort. That there's this old joke that I'm going to mess up, that basically the difference is if you're a full-time employee, you're working 40 hours for somebody else. If you're a freelancer, you're working 80 hours for yourself. And there's a lot of truth to that, because as a freelancer, you're not just doing whatever it is that you're doing, but you're also having to build the business on the side. That you're having to go out and get customers and get clients and find work and bill people and chase down people who are late paying and so forth and so on. And so there's an awful lot of extra stuff that goes into being a freelancer that you have to be willing to take on, that you have to be willing to accept. Now, there's certain ways that you can mitigate this. That if you are, if you're going to, say, be writing code, you can actually work through different vendors, where you can work through basically an agent effectively, whose job it is to go out and to get you work. And that can absolutely be nice, because then I don't have to worry about billing my clients. I'm billing my agent, and that they're always going to pay me. And so I'll have some level of stability there. That they will be the ones that will be going out and finding work for me, because of course, the busier that they keep me, the more money that they make. because, and this is of course the downside, they're going to take a cut of whatever it is that that they're paying me. So they're going to take, let's say, 20%, 30% of whatever it is that should be flowing down to me. So there is a little bit of a trade-off there. And I'll say for me personally, when I got started, I worked through agents for the most part to start. But I had a goal very early on to try and get away from that as quickly as possible. So I would say when I started, I was probably 80-20 of agents to just working direct. And towards the end of my time as a vendor, I was probably only about like 10 or 15% working for an agent, and all the rest of it was directly to clients. And so it took me a little while to get there, but yeah. And so it can be a great way to get experience. It can be a great way to give yourself opportunity, but you just have to remember that there's going to be a lot of extra stuff that's going to come along with that. So. Yeah. Is Microsoft working on a true AI? Sure. Any recommendations or advice on internships in Microsoft? You live in Germany. So yeah, so if you go to just Microsoft.com/university, you can find out about all of the internships that are available. And the best thing that I would say is, we have internships for literally everything. That whatever it is that we do inside of Microsoft, which is a lot, we have internships for that. And so whatever it is that you think you might want to be able to do, chances are there's an internship role somewhere inside of Microsoft where you can do that. So Julian or Julian says, in my opinion, accepting a free job for a limited period of time is a good way to learn. So, I was trying to sidestep that before. I'll go ahead and say this. So, my advice to everybody is get paid. Demand to get paid. That if somebody is going to be making money off of what it is that you're doing, you should be making money as well. Get paid, get paid, get paid. Now, having said that, I have a handful of times done various just like week-long events or otherwise where I did not get paid. And in particular, I spent a lot of time working at various conferences where I didn't get paid, or if I did get paid, about all that I got was travel and expenses. But for the time that I was actually working, I wasn't getting paid. Now, the reason that I decided to do those types of things was because I was going to be at a conference, and it was going to be a good networking opportunity for me. So I was going to be freelance. So it gave me an opportunity to network with people at Microsoft who are eventually going to be able to give me money for doing work for them in the future. Or it would give me an opportunity to connect with different companies who I could then potentially take on as clients. And so while I wasn't getting paid directly, I sort of viewed it as a business expense. And so that was why I went ahead and did it. So getting paid, not getting paid, I'm still very much of the belief of get paid, get paid, get paid. But if you are going to make the decision to do something where you're not going to get paid, think about that and really kind of think that whole thing through, that there can be times where that is the right decision, but you do want to be very careful about doing that. And in particular, if somebody else is going to be making money off of you, you should be making money for that as well. Let's see. Are there any programs that a beginner like myself can apply for? I'm guessing you're talking about at Microsoft. Internships or the LEAP program can be a great way to do that. When networking through LinkedIn, should you focus more on tech recruiters or employees? So the yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Pete here that it's I'm pausing because I'm not sure what I should say here. Because of course Microsoft owns LinkedIn, so I don't want to bash LinkedIn. So I'm not going to do that. So I want to just make sure that I'm being a little bit careful here. So, I think I'm just going to pass on that altogether. That I I don't have enough personal experience with LinkedIn. I LinkedIn didn't necessarily become a thing until at least in my career, sort of relatively speaking, relatively late. So I haven't had to use LinkedIn an awful lot. LinkedIn, like Pete says, can be a great place to maintain connections, and that's that's I think one of the biggest things is the people that you know in the industry are going to be the ones that are most likely going to help you get that next job. That getting the first job might require some level of cold calling and going that route and pounding the pavement. But it's always going to be easier if you know somebody. It's always going to be easier if you have a network that you can start to rely on. And I think that this is one great place where LinkedIn can really help, is that when you establish those types of connections, now I can go in and start to kind of explore that network. And if I realize, hey, there's a job that's sitting over here, and I maybe see on LinkedIn that somebody is associated with that, I might be able to look at who that person is and go, hey, you know what? I know somebody that they know. So maybe I can go to that person and then they can go ahead and connect me, because a resume is always going to carry a lot more weight if it's being brought in by if it's going to be brought in by somebody else. So that can be a really nice thing that you can do on LinkedIn, because again, the way that you're going to find your next job and the job after that and the job after that is very rarely by just cold applying for a job. That's just not how you're typically going to find it, but rather you're going to find it by knowing somebody and by connecting with them. So I would definitely recommend doing that. And if a way to keep those connections alive is on LinkedIn, then absolutely do that on LinkedIn. Okay. Lisa's can't wait for the next Code and Coffee session. When am I planning to hold the next one? Well, thank you for that. The next one's actually going to be out in January. And eventually here I'm going to write code. But the next one will be on January 7th. This is actually the last one of the year. So that'll be mostly shutting down for December. I know what I said earlier about, hey, don't save your vacation until December. I typically don't. I'm usually very good about taking vacation throughout the year. But of course, we have this little thing called a pandemic going on. And so there wasn't anywhere to go. And I really like to, go somewhere for my vacation. So as a result, I just didn't burn any vacation. So I've got something to get through. So anyway, okay, cool. Let's see here. Let's turn our attention to a little bit of code here. All right. um, yeah, Pete provides some great advice there. Is how to break into the break into the industry. Meetups, markets, maker spaces, user groups, all of those types of things are extremely important to are extremely important, and they're great ways to connect with people. So 100% do all of those types of things. And yeah, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, remember when we could go out and be with other people? Remember when we could hug people? I'm a hugger. I really miss hugging people. Could I hold it more often? There's only one of me. I wish I could, but I do this once a week. And it's just that for December, I'm going to be shutting down, after that. So yeah, you can also hire professional recruiters for fee. That can also be a thing. So, yep. Okay. Cool. So let's do this. So what we've been doing, trying to pivot now into code, and this was a fantastic conversation. And I want to thank everybody here that I'm just going to go back to this real quick. So one of the big goals of doing this, of doing Code and Coffee, and not doing this as just pre-canned slick demos, is I basically want this type of an opportunity that if everybody in chat wants to ask about something else, I want the opportunity to take whatever it was that I had thought about trying to do today, just throw that to the side, and then let's just have a conversation with chat. That really is what this is all about. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I enjoyed that as well. If you've got more questions, I'm absolutely happy to answer those and so forth as we go along. So okay. Thank you, Tyler. Remember Alice? It's a song about Alice. Let's obscure reference. Ask your parents. Let's pivot then into doing a little bit of code. So what we've been doing over the last few weeks here is oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Gaith. Is we've been building an application from scratch. So what we had started with is a little bit Bootstrap, TypeScript, and Mongoose using Cosmos DB and using Azure Static Web Apps. So that's what we had built, and that's where we were heading towards. And then a couple of weeks ago, we hit a point where we went, all right, for the app that we're trying to build, we're going to need some better framework here. And so we decided that we were going to add Vue in as a front-end framework, and that was what we did the week before Thanksgiving, so now 2 weeks ago. And so that's where we're going to try and pick up from with today. So here's our app as it currently sits. Right now, this is the version that's running on my local system, but we do actually have it deployed out to Azure as well. And so the way that our application works is we're listing out a bunch of dogs here. And if you click on a dog, it will give you the ability to then edit the dog, and then if you hit save, it will then update the information about the dog there. And so this is now where we had left, and this little bit of binding that you're seeing here as I'm clicking on each of the items, all of this is being done through Vue. So this is where we left off. Now, I put the list and the form side by side here, mostly because of the fact that we had yet to get into doing any form of routing or anything like that. And that's now where I want to start to explore is how we could turn this into a truer single page app. That if I click on Sammy, for example, it'd be nice to be able to see a details page, and then maybe have the details page give us an edit button, and be able to edit that way, and be able to navigate now all with that single page app going on. So that's going to be sort of the goal here is let's start to take what we've got and to make this into a better single page app. And again, we're using Vue for everything that we're doing here. And if we take a look at the docs inside of Vue, what we want to do, or what we want to do with this, is we want to set up what are known as routes. Now, one of the big things that that Vue allows you to do is you can actually add on whatever router it is that you might want to add on. Now, there is an officially supported router called Vue Router. It's a very clever name that you can use, and that's what we're going to go ahead and use. But you can see a little bit of how about how it works. So in a nutshell, what's going to wind up happening here is we're going to set up different components. And if we go back and take a look at our page, this list item here is going to be a component. And this form can be a component. And our details page can then become a component. And with each route, what we're going to do is say if the user says, for example, /about, that we're now going to load a particular component and then display that component out to the user. And what we're also going to see is that we can even pass in parameters into the route as well. So if I say, for example, /dogs/Sammy, that I can then see, or I can then retrieve that name of Sammy and be able to then go load the details for Sammy and be able to display them out. And so that's what routing is all about. And routing is it's a core concept in web dev in general, be it client side, single page apps, or in server side as well, because it's all based on this URL here, that whatever it is that you provide to this URL, that's your way of telling the web application, this is the piece of information that I want, or this is the action that I'm looking to perform here. And so when we set up our Vue routing, rather than the server grabbing this, instead what's going to happen is it's going to happen on the client, and the client will be able to read that path and be able to interpret it and figure out what it is that the user is trying to do. So when they click on this, we'll update the URL, and then we'll be able to display that out. Okay. Now, the way that we're going to start this off is we do need to install the right package. And if we remember, back over here, that we can just use the Vue router. And so we can see our Vue router documentation. And so we can hit the guide and we can start to look through this. Now, one very important thing about the about the guide here is we'll give you a lot of great information about how to get in and start setting everything up and so forth and so on. And so this is wonderful to go in and check out. So there it all is, and we can start to again see kind of that core thing that we were talking about before, that I'm going to set up my home component for /. I'm going to set up my about component, and then I'm going to create the router based off of these routes, and then tell it to use the router, and then away we go from there. So let's get to it, shall we? So let me install the router. And I'll do this by using npm install. And then I want Vue router next. And I think I might already have it here because I was playing around with it earlier. Nope, I'm good. Okay, cool. All right. So there is there's my Vue router. And with our Vue router, what we need to do is update now how our application is going to start. So previously, the way that it started is we had this one core app that we used that's displaying out our main page. And then we just simply said, hey, display this. That was what we did originally. Well, now, so Lee asked the question, is this like a series where all the things are built on what we did last week? It absolutely is. It absolutely is. But if you weren't here earlier, then that's okay. That what you can then focus in on is, oh, this is how I can do routing inside of Vue. So if you haven't seen how this might have been done previously, or you weren't here earlier, that's okay. And you can also check out the GitHub repository, go clone that and check that out as well. Okay, cool. So I want to now rewrite this to now use routing instead. So let me start here, and I'm going to import in a couple of items that I'm going to need. Some of this is just to help support what it is that I'm doing in TypeScript. So I'm going to need create router, which is going to give me the ability to create my router, create web hash history. And this here is basically going to give us the opportunity to control the history and the back button inside of the browser. That one very big challenge that you have in working with single page applications is the back button. That on almost any normal application, if the user wants to go back to a previous page, they hit the back button. And that's a problem in a lot of applications, because if they hit the back button, that's now going to cause them to leave this single page app, which is not normally what I want them to do. So by using that create web hash history, that's going to give me that bit of control there and better have going back and forth between pages and things like that. And then last but not least is going to be this little thing called route record raw. And this is just going to be a data type to allow me to describe how a route is going to be put together. So from Vue router. There we go. Okay, cool. So now let's start building our routing table. Const routes. Now, building up a routing table is something that is building up a routing table is something that is relatively common, that in almost any type of application that you're going to build, any type of web application that you're going to build, you're going to have some level of a routing table. And how you put that together will vary a little bit depending on where you are. Quite commonly, what you wind up doing to build out your routing table is you will have a method or a function, and then you'll put the route that it's going to that's going to respond to it like right on top of it. And that's the way like Express works. That the way that Express works is I'm going to have, whatever my router or my app is. So I would say router dot and then get, for example, / and then res, and then write the rest of it from here. And so now what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, if somebody says / run this function, and away we go from there. Or if I was doing this in Flask, then it winds up being something like app.route, app, stop, IntelliSensing, app.route, and then whatever my route winds up being. And then now I go in and say def index, for example, and then I write out whatever it is that I want from here. But in other places, and Django's a great example of this, what you wind up doing is you wind up centralizing all of your routes in one location, or maybe what you do is you create sort of like one parent level routing table that then points to different children for lower level items. And so when I'm doing a Vue routing table, that's basically the way that I wind up doing, is that it's going to be this one centralized location for my routes. And then if I wanted to create like smaller children elsewhere, then I could go ahead and do that. So let's go in and let's set up our routes here. I don't need router key there. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Okay. Now, when you set up a route, there's going to be a couple of main items here. So the first is going to be the path that you want this to now appear on. So we want this to be on on /. We can give it a name. And this can help us out a little bit later when we go to set up linking and things like this. And then finally, last but not least, is the component. And the component is then going to be what we want to display when somebody goes to this route. So again, inside of our application, here's our main component. Our main component, the main item that we're going to be displaying, is this app here. And so this app is now where I'm listing out all of my dogs, and then I've also got the form. So what I'm saying right now, and I'm going to modify this in a minute, is that if somebody went to / that what I want to do is I just want to show them the core application. That's what I want to show them here. Now, there's actually two different ways that you can do this. One way that you can do it is by doing it this way, where you've got that name right there. And that's fine, but there is a little bit of a downside here, that if I leave it this way, it's going to load this at load time. And if I've got a relatively large application where I've got a lot of components and I'm registering all of them inside of my route table, what Vue needs to do is it now needs to go load every last component before it can start my application. And that's bad. I don't want to do things that way. Because, and all of us have been on the interwebs, especially like on a mobile phone, and you know how annoying it is when a web page takes a long time for it to load up. So rather than hard coding, hey, do this, instead what we want to do is a little bit of a dance here, is we want to dynamically import in, and I'm going to create a brand new one here in a minute here. There we go. We want to dynamically import in the component, or what's known as lazy loading. So now it's not going to load dog details until the moment that we go to use it. Now, granted, this is going to get loaded right away because I'm at /, but this is still a good habit to get yourself into. So that way you're only loading what you need when you need it. This is the way that we want to, go about doing things. Okay. So now that I've got that, now what I want to do is actually create my router. So I'm going to say const router equals create router. There we go. And then now my history, create web hash history. This is now giving me the ability to control the browser history. And then I'm going to add in my my routes. And then finally, I'm going to have it use that router that I just built. Okay, so what I've done here is I have now set up my routing table. I have created the Vue router, and now I have updated the app to use the router. Now, the next thing that I'm going to need is somewhere to display this information. Now, you'll notice that what I did here is I created haven't yet created, but I'm going to create a brand new component here that I'm going to call dog details. Oops, I don't want to call it dog details. Why did I type in dog details? Why did I do that? I want dog list. There we go. Then I'm going to call dog list. And this is now going to list out all of the dogs. That's all that it's going to do, is it's just going to list all of the dogs. So let's do that real quick. Let me dog list.view. There we go. And let me create a view component. That'll work. Cool. All right. So let me go ahead and let me just grab the list here. Yep. Just going to grab that. I'm going to put that in. So that is all of the HTML that's needed to display out my list. I'm just going to change the formatting on that a little bit. There we go. And I don't want to go directly to edit, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So this is going to display the list of all the dogs. Right now, it's not going to do anything when you click on them, but that's okay. So we'll have that. And then now let me go grab the code that I need to go load my my dogs here. Let me, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to bring all of this over. Yeah, let's just bring all of this over. Okay. And just need to do a little bit of cleanup work here. Chugga. There we go. Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm just moving a little bit of code around because I want this to now just be my list. So I don't need edit dog anymore. Just going to store that over here to the side for safekeeping. This is now going to go get all of my dogs. That looks good. I don't need that. I don't need edit dog or save dog. So let me go grab that. Okay. So all that I'm doing here is I'm just trimming this down. So that way, the only thing that this is going to do is just list the dogs, which honestly is probably the way that I should have built it in the first place, but that's all right. We were, doing other things. So that's now the only thing that this component is going to be responsible for, is just listing dogs. Okay. So dog list, and let's also give this a name of dog list. There we go. Okay, so now that I've got that gone, let's go ahead and grab that, and I'm just going to put that out to the side here. And now we want to display something. So let me bring up my my routing here. So what you're going to notice about the way that routing works inside of the way that routing works inside of Vue is we have this little router view. And what router view is going to do is it's going to be a placeholder to display whatever the current information from our route is. So if I go back to our index view, if we go /, what it should display then is the dog list, because that would be our current view from the router. So let me go ahead and put in just router view. That's all that I need. Let me save that. And let me just make sure that everything else looks good here. That looks good. That looks good. Let me make sure I'm not getting any error messages behind the scenes. So far, everything is looking good. Okay. So, in theory, if I've done this correctly, nope. I haven't done it correctly. What am I missing? Default export is not defined. Okay. Let me go take a look. What did I miss? I have my router here. So /, name is going to be home. Import is going to be dog list.view. Oh, I don't want ... I just want ... There we go. Did that do it? Nope. Okay. Let's see. And so now I'm going to create my router. I'm going to create my web hash history, create app, router, mount that. Okay. All of that looks good. Let's come back over here. Oh, that's funny. Is it complaining because I just don't have anything that I'm exporting? There we go. That's a funny little error message. All right, it was yelling at me because I wasn't exporting any bit of code here from my script tag. Even though I'm not using any of it, I still need to at least acknowledge that, hey, script could actually go here. And so that's why it was yelling at me. So now all that my app is doing is it's just acting as a placeholder for whatever current route information it is that we're going to display here. So so that's it. So there we go. So now I've got my list of dogs, and all of that's looking pretty good. Now, of course, right now, if I'm clicking on any of it, nothing is happening. I need to add in another route for that, but that's pretty slick. So now, whenever I go to /, that's now going to work. So user asks the question, is it worth learning Web3? I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with Web3. I don't know what Web3 is. So I don't have an answer. Is Visual Studio Code, Real.js, the end-all be-all when it comes to scripting languages in terms of versatility? In my opinion, yes. That honestly, Visual Studio Code is the only editor that I use. And honestly, it's the only editor that I've been using for probably about the last 3 or 4 years now, that it's fantastic because it's lightweight. There's a bunch of great extensions that help give you better IntelliSense or snippets or other things. And yeah, it's such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful editor. It's really the only one that I use. So in my opinion, yes. But again, keep in mind, I work for Microsoft. So yeah. Okay, cool. All righty. Let's get back to it. So now here's what I want to do is I want to make it so that when you click on one of these dogs, that we're now going to get the details for that dog, which is sort of the normal flow here, is that if you click on an item, let's take you to the details page and show you that. So first things first, let's go ahead and add in another route here. So let's go ahead and say path, and let's say /. Now, the path that I want to use here is going to be based on the name of the dog. So if you type in, Sammy, then I want to make sure that we're going to show you Sammy here. So I want dog / and then whatever the name is. The way that we set up a parameter is by using a colon. So by my specifying colon, this is now going to become a named parameter. And I'll be able to read that name then and be able to work with that to display out the details. So let's go ahead and grab that. The next thing then is a name, and let's say details. The next is going to be the component. And now this is really going to be, again, where that import is going to come into play. Is by my saying import here, this is now not going to launch. It's not going to load this component until the first time that somebody brings up details for a dog. So if nobody ever brings up details for a dog, it's then never going to load that component. And that's good. That if I'm not going to use something, I don't want to load it. Okay. Now the last little thing that I'm going to add in here is props equals true. So what props equals true is going to do is it's going to pass the route information into the component. So when we're creating components, and this is something that we saw previously when we did our dog form, is that I can create what are known as props or properties. And properties allow me to pass information into a component to make it dynamic. So now I can pass any dog that I want into the form, and it will then be able to display that dog. So by my saying props true, it's now going to pass the name in as a property, and I'll be able to read that inside of dog details. Okay, so let's now set up a dog details. And let's create our component here, and let's do details. Do I have, what's going to be the easiest way to do it? Section, class equals row. I'm using Bootstrap here for my display. Let's say section class equals col3. That'll work. Strong name. So what I'm doing here is I am just setting up the display for the dog details. And so I'm just using a bit of Bootstrap here to display that out. Dog.name, because eventually we'll have the dog. There we go. And we'll go ahead and display it out. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kind of build this iteratively here. Let's just start with name. Let's just leave it that way. Okay, cool. So now, let's say props, and then I want name and the type to be a string. Actually, I want... I need to go grab... I need to cheat here because I don't remember. Oh, okay. I can actually just do it this way. I can just say type is a string, and then let's set the default to be an empty string. Okay. I think that's right. I'm just going to go back and double check. Just cheating here. Props dog type, and then my default. Yeah, I think I can just do it that way. All right, I think I'm good there. All right, so what you're going to notice here is I'm creating a brand new component. And so this component is now going to display out the details for a dog. And the way that at the moment it's going to do that is by having a property called name. It's going to be of type string, and then it's just going to display that right here. And you know what I'm going to do for the placeholder is I'm just going to type in placeholder, so that way we can see that. So this is now eventually what's going to get displayed. Now, what's really neat here is I can then build up a link here to that to the details. So you'll notice that I've got this little thing called router link. And what this will do is it will be able to dynamically build out a route for me or a link for me to a particular route. Now, I want a piece of information here. I want, I think, I'm trying to remember. Here's what I'm trying to remember is, and I'll just go back and look it up in a second here, is, so now I'm going to, instead of saying anchor, I'm going to say router link, enclose router link. And so now I'm going to say 2 equals, and then I'm going to say, what did I call it? Details. And there's a way that I can also now pass parameters in, but I don't remember how to do that off the top of my head here. Let's see. Named routes. Ah, there it is. That's the syntax that I want. There we go. Yoink. Okay, and so the name is details, and then the params, it's going to be name, and then dog name. Okay, and let me just put that out over to here. Okay, so here's what this is going to do, is router link is now going to create a special type of anchor. And instead of this linking out to somewhere else, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to look at my routing table. And I'm going to go, hey, I'm looking for a route that's called details. Well, sure enough, I've got a route that I've called details. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a parameter here of a name that's going to be set to the value of whatever the name of the current dog is. And you'll notice that on my v4, I'm looping through all of the dogs. And again, if I go back to the route here, what you're going to notice is that I've got a parameter name here called name. So it's automatically going to set that up for me. So if I save this and I come back over here to my browser, there's all of my items. And in theory, if I click on one, yeah, look at that. If I click on one of these, now you're going to notice that it's now taking me to, in this case, Mongoose. And if I click on Sammy, it's now displaying Sammy. And if I click on Vue, it's now taking me to Vue. And you'll also notice right up here that my route is being updated. So what we're seeing here is really two big things. We're seeing, first of all, is that when I click on one of these items, that it's now properly doing the route for me. It's now properly updating that. But the other very big thing that we're seeing is that that name that's being passed in, that is now being passed over as a property. That if I go back and take a look at my dog details, I had added in a property called name, and I set up my my type, my placeholder, or whatever. But the key part here is this name. That is now what is being passed in, and it's now being displayed out. So pretty cool. So now I've at least got the name. I'm gonna have to go load up the dog details in a second here, but I've at least got the name. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Real.js, is there an upper limit on how many forms you're allowed to use your app to pull data from? I don't think so. Nope. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and add in the code to display out the full dog. So what I want to do is I want to be able to call back to the server to go load the data up. So over here, I've got a store where I've got the appropriate code to call out to my API to go grab individual or to go grab whatever data it is that I want. Right now, I've just got get all and I've got update. So let me add in one more here, which will be get, and we'll say name string. And now let's go ahead and build this up. So const response equals await fetch API dogs. And the name here. So this API is one that we had built up previously. We can actually see it in action if we want. Localhost 7071 API dogs, and let's say Sammy. And this will now just give me back Sammy. So that's what I'm going to be calling here. So we'll pass in the name, const JSON equals await response JSON. So now I've got the dog, and now I can just return this back. So let's go ahead and do this. Tell it that it's going to return back a dog. Oh. There we go. Return. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's all looking good here. So now this is going to return back our dog. Okay, cool. So now let's come back over to our dog details, and let's set up a couple of items here. So the first thing that I'm going to need is I'm going to need my data. And my data is going to be what will allow me to display out data very easily on the details page. So I'm going to create just a placeholder dog here. Do I not have dog? Import dog from interfaces. There we go. That looks better. And so I need this to be name, age, and then description. Okay. All right. There's probably an easier way to do this, but I don't know what it is. And I know that this works, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, what I want to do here is when our application is launched, when it's mounted, that, or when this component is mounted, that now I want to go grab the dog from the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dog equals await. I need my store. Import store from store. There we go. Await store get this name. Okay. So if you're curious about where this dog or this name is coming from, it's because I set them up as the data and as the properties here. So there's the dog, and then there is the there's the name. So cool. All right. So this is now going to load up that dog dynamically. And now if I hit save here, let me come back over to my page and let's go ahead and hit mongoose. Oops, I need to display out the rest of the details yet. Let's finish displaying this out. Dog name. Boom, 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 boom. Age, description, cool. So now, there we go. So now, just like that, I've got the dog details. So now what you're going to notice is that when I click on Sammy, now I'm getting the full details. And the way that it's doing that is by dynamically going out to the server and loading the details then when I click on the link. So pretty cool. Okay. Interesting. Finding master projects slow down tremendously. Yeah, it's possible. Sure. Okay, let's. I've only got a little bit of time left. Trying to figure out what I want to do here. You know what I want to do? I think I just want to deploy this out. I think that's what I want to do here. So let me do this. Azure Static Web Apps. And I want routes. Okay. So one of the challenges that we do face when we are putting together an application that's going to use routes is making sure that the server is not going to take over any of our routes. And so what you have the ability to do here is to identify any routes that you might be using, or if you were going to be doing anything with, say, security, that you wanted to go in and do that, or do any rerouting or anything like that. So you get a lot of control here on how it is that you want all of the routes and everything else to be displayed out. Now, if we take a look at the app, the way that Vue, and honestly a lot of other applications handle this, is they'll automatically throw in a hashtag. And so that little hashtag, which is also part of that web hash history, is now going to say, hey, this is now going to be on the client. So whenever there's a hashtag inside of a URL, that says whatever comes after this should only be looked at by the client. And so for simplicity's sake, I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to leave it that way. I think I'm just going to leave it with just that. So what I should be able to do then is just deploy this out into Azure, and it should now work. Now, the way that I'm handling the deployment is this: I am using Azure Static Web Apps. And so one really cool thing about the way that Azure Static Web Apps works is it's all based around a GitHub workflow. So as long as I'm pushing out to this repository, it'll automatically handle my deployment for me. So I'm going to go ahead and git checkout b Vue routing, let's say. Git add everything, git commit m added routing, and then git push u origin Vue routing. Okay. Let that push out. Cool. It was actually pretty quick. I like seeing that. All right. So now let me go into Code and Coffee here. You'll notice that I've now got this new little branch here. I'm going to hit compare. And now I'm going to hit create pull request. Let that do its thing. And so now, here's what's happening is because of the fact, you can actually see it right here, because of the fact that I made a PR here, it's now going to execute that action, and it's going to create a staging environment inside of my website for me, which is pretty slick here. So I'm just going to give that a couple of moments here to do its thing. It's been pretty quiet. I've been kind of just doing my thing here. There's been a couple of questions. Anybody still out there? I know Real Deal is still out there. Anybody else? Am I alone? Just letting this deploy here. Always just takes it a minute. Can go in and see the whole thing. Todd is still here. That's good. That's good to hear. Cool. Excellent. All right. Good. All righty. Okay. Yeah, I'm just finishing out. Do I have any funny coding stories? I really don't. I really don't. This is taking its own sweet time today. Why are you taking so long? Anyway, so as this is deploying out, what I want to mention here is, and I hinted at it earlier. There we go. Now it's deployed. Is that this is going to be? Have I ever had any problems with Git conflicts? Who hasn't had problems with Git conflicts? Yeah. Um, so anyway, so what I want to mention here, as we're kind of closing out on today, is that this is going to again be the last Code and Coffee broadcast for the year. That'll be back in January, but this will be the last one for the year, and I haven't quite decided what it is that I want to do after this. So I feel like that there's still some room that we could continue to grow here. That there's certainly more that we could do with Vue. We haven't yet taken a look at authentication, authorization, which could certainly be a lot of fun with Azure Static Web Apps. Or we could also, go explore a different technology. So I'm on Twitter. And if there's anything that you're going, hey, I'd really love in the web dev space to see this, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll absolutely take a look and see if maybe we can do that. So I haven't quite decided the direction that I want to sort of take the show and take the app going into January. So definitely hit me up on Twitter, or if you've got ideas you want to throw them in a chat, go ahead and do that. Jody says React with TypeScript. That could certainly be a good one. I will openly admit I'd have to go learn React, but that could certainly be a good one. So yeah, let me hit browse here. So this is now deployed out. All of that's looking good. Pretty cool. And so now if I want to make this go live, then what I can do is just go back to the pull request and then just merge it. And then now that will go live. VBA to TypeScript transition. I don't think I've got that handy. That one I'm going to have to pass on. React. Carlos points something out there that, we could use different texts and compare them later. Maybe going back and kind of doing the same thing, but maybe doing it in React could be a fun way to do that. It's honestly like if I'm demoing, it's one of the things that I really like to do a lot is to do the same thing, but to do it in a couple of different frameworks, just because I find it works really well as a nice compare and contrast. So maybe that's something that we could do there. So yeah, okay, I like that idea. Yeah, I could go learn React. We could start taking a look at that in January. I dig that. Cool. All right. Then I guess that's settled. Cool. All right. In any event, let me go to the main site deployed out on Azure. It's still in the middle of deploying. It's just going to take it a minute here to finish doing its thing. But eventually this will become live. So, cool. We can have a Discord channel for discussions. That's a great question. I'd have to take a look. I'd have to take a look at that and figure out how to best put that together. We've talked a little bit in the past about doing a Discord channel. I think a Discord channel could be a lot of fun, and definitely something that we could that we could take a look at. So yeah, still waiting for this to finish deploying out to live, but I think I can at least now do this. Bloop. There we go. Kind of a light coding day because we had a really nice conversation at the beginning, which was certainly a lot of fun. So yeah, there we go. That looks better. Whoops. Oh, because I'm looking at the wrong URL. There we go. There's the right URL. Cool. And so there it is. There we've got it. So, yeah. So the question is, how do we connect? Honestly, at the very least, the best place to find me is on Twitter, and then go from there. Yeah, the moderation Carlos points out would be really the key there. So that would be sort of the biggest thing. But yeah. Okay, cool. So we accomplished the main tasks there, that we implemented routing and kind of a truer single page app. We didn't get into editing. We just sort of ran out of time. We were having a great conversation earlier this morning, which I think is fantastic. And it was definitely I think something that was well worth the time taking up to go look at. So yeah. So in the meantime, like I said, this is it for the year. This has been a lot of fun. So one of the things that I want to highlight is that there's been certain names like Pete and Carlos and Ted and all sorts of people, Stephen and other names, Michael, that I'm certainly going to forget that have been here for quite a while and almost like been here from the start. And this has been a really fun journey to kind of walk through and to start to build up this space and build up this community. That when we started this a handful of weeks ago, I honestly had no idea how this was going to work. I had no idea if this was going to work. And so it's been wonderful to see this actually grow. And it's been so fantastic to see so many of the same names coming back and to also just like have conversations like that hour that we started with about just like career things and so forth. I don't know if anybody else enjoyed that, but I certainly did. And it was great. And so I'm super thrilled to see this grow. So yeah, so I think what I'm going to do, I think we're going to close off for today. I'm already a little bit past what I'm supposed to be broadcasting at. So I'm going to close off for today. We'll be back next year on January 7th. And I guess we'll take a look at React. I think that's sort of a nice next space to go, that I feel like we've done quite a bit here. And it'd be nice to have to have a fresh start on everything. So I think React will be a great place to start come January. In the meantime, you can find me over on Twitter, Geek Trainer. So you can find me over there and connect with me there. And then outside of that, let me just get my camera to refocus. There we go. One more time. Thank you to everybody. Please stay safe this winter, this holiday season. Enjoy your holidays, whatever it is that you celebrate. I have a Catholic father and a Jewish mother, so I celebrate both Hanukkah and Christmas. So happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas from me. Happy whatever it is that you celebrate. And definitely find me on Twitter. And I will see all of you in the next year. So thank you. Bye.